Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Whitelinos. My pronouns are he, him. I am the Artist and Community Development Coordinator here at the Laundromat Project. Today, I'm here to deliver an informational presentation on our open grant opportunity, the Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund, which is a grant opportunity we offer to the local Bed-Stuy community every year, open from April 1st. This year, open from April 1st, 2024 to May 1st, 2024. But without further ado, I'll walk us through the presentation, especially for those of you who are not able to make it to our in-person and live informational sessions held at Macon Library on this past Thursday, April 11th. And for those who can't make the upcoming information session this upcoming Thursday, April 25th at Me Central Brooklyn. But in this recorded informational session, I'll go over these topics. I'll give a brief overview of the Laundromat project and our history and our mission, as well as giving an overview of the Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund and the application and what constitutes an eligible application, as well as a strong proposal for review. I'll also go over the timeline of the application, including the open call period, as well as the selection review process, and if selected, the post-selection process. Throughout the open call process, we've gotten a few questions from folks interested in applying to the grant, and so we'll also go over those commonly asked questions at the end. And if anyone ever has any questions for the Laundromat project, specifically about the Create and Connect grant opportunity and the application process, folks are always welcome to email us at community@laundromatproject.org. And the spelling of that email will be made available at the end of this presentation. So the Laundromat project, who are we? The Laundromat Project is a community arts organization founded in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Our mission is to advance artists and neighbors as change agents in their own communities. We do that by envisioning a world in which artists, neighbors, and communities of color work together to unleash the power of creativity to transform lives. We are interested in making sustainable investments and growing a community of multiracial, multi-generational, and multidisciplinary artists and neighbors committed to societal change by supporting their art making, community building, and leadership development. Basically, the Laundromat Project sees art and creativity as a vehicle for social change and community connection. So as an arts organization, we not only focus on supporting artists, right? Whether you identify yourself as an artist or not, supporting people who work in creative spaces. We also support the ongoing, activities and livelihood of the communities of color that we're trying to engage with through our artists, through our neighbors, through any, community organizers that would like to collaborate with us, in our various programming. The Laundromat Project was, as I said, founded in Bed-Stuy. It was founded in 2005. Sorry. We've been, a nonprofit for about 19 years. We're nearing in on our 20th year, as 20th year anniversary as an organization. We are a Black-rooted and people of color-centered arts organization. Since the organization's inception, we have had Black women leaders at the helm of the Laundromat Project. We were founded by a Black woman based in Bed-Stuy, Reza Wilson, and since then have maintained that legacy of Black women leadership at the Laundromat Project. And in terms of programming, focus specifically on supporting artists of color, neighbors of color, organizers of color, and communities of color through our flagship Create Change Fellowship and Residency Program, through our general public program offerings, and through any of our various programs offered at the Laundromat Project, including the Bed-Stuy Create and Connect grant, which I am discussing currently. Mainly as an organization, we provide training and resources to artists and community organizers. At the Laundromat project, we see artists as community organizers and community organizers as artists, because we believe, that it takes creative energy and effort to bring communities together as much as it does to create, let's say, like a painting, right? And so we have a very flexible definition of art and artist, which extends to community organizing, which extends to people that really care and want to do something for their community. As an arts and community organization, we support public art and community engagement projects that bring attention to issues like food injustice, gentrification, climate change, community safety, and more. To my earlier point, at the LP, we see art and action as vehicles for change making and for community connection. And with that kind of ethos in mind, we're always trying to center or uplift issues or causes in the communities that we work with, especially in Bed-Stuy, that are of concern to the local community and to the neighbors that we interact with, making sure that there is purpose and action attached to the work that we do and the programs that we provide. And for those of you who don't know or haven't walked by Fulton Street, the Laundromat Project is located on Fulton Street in Bed-Stuy, specifically at 1476 Fulton Street, right around the corner from the Kingston through C train stop. The Laundromat Project was founded in Bed-Stuy about 19 years ago, but we've only settled down with a permanent space in Bed-Stuy since 2020. But haven't been able to make this space available to the public through our programming until about fall of 2022 because of the pandemic, which delayed a lot of things for a couple of years. But our storefront space at 1476 Fulton Street is the first time in the organization's history where we had a space of our own where we are able to freely program events and workshops and offer up space, community space to folks in the local community for community events. So if you haven't visited us at 1476 Fulton Street, please feel free to do so. Our doors are open and our staff are welcome to chat with you all about anything or even about the Bed-Stuy Create and Connect grant. Yeah, and just sort of pulling on some threads, that I'd mentioned earlier, as an arts org, we try to have expansive definitions of art and community to be reflective of how the communities of color we serve choose to self-define. So for us, art is any cultural tradition, practice, object, or action made with creative intent and grounded in community. This can include, visual, media, literary, craft, folk, and performing arts, as well as disciplines and practices people may not typically categorize as art, but at the LP, we do consider that artistic practice or community practice, right? Which can include curation, archival preservation, scholarship, education, oral histories, healing, gardening, community organizing, activism, and so on, right? And the reason why we have an expansive definition, drawing from the roots of our, founders, is because to us, to be an artist, to quote our founder, Reza Wilson, to be an artist is to be a creative person and to figure things out, right? To use whatever materials are available to you to figure it out, right? So an artist, a community organizer is a person that cares about their community and uses the resources around them, connects with the people around them to figure out an approach or solution to a problem or topic of discussion, right? And that expansive definition allows us to have a lot of flexibility in terms of the projects that we're able to fund through this specific grant at the Laundromat Project, where art takes an expansive definition, where art is active, right? Art can mean community organizing. or a number of different cultural practices that we would love to see enlivened and invested in the Bed-Stuy community and broadly across New York City. All that being said, you do not have to consider yourself an artist or community organizer or attach any label to yourself to be able to apply to the Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund. The Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund is a community grant fund exclusive to Bed-Stuy, specifically designed to see the creative and civic ideas of the local community members who want to see something good happen in their community, who want to make a cultural or community impact that overall provides some kind of positive impact on the overall community and the people that live here. Yeah, which is what this next slide is about, an explainer about the Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund. And expand a bit more about what I said. The Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund is a community grant exclusive to Bed-Stuy. And I think that's an important emphasis, right? This grant, the reason why Bed-Stuy is in the name is because the intention is to fund projects that are led by Bed-Stuy-based or affiliated community members, right? To fund projects that are going to happen in the Bed-Stuy community, right? To fund projects that are going to impact and positively impact the neighbors that live in Bed-Stuy, right, and its various communities. So Bed-Stuy, is very central to this grant, and we have a large emphasis on place in terms of the types of proposals we're looking to fund. But continuing onwards, the Create and Connect Fund is a community grant for creative initiatives and civic projects that are rooted in community, foster meaningful connections, and ignite socially conscious conversations. We do this to support the creative ideas and civic actions of our artists, cultural practitioners, community organizers, activists, and neighbors whose proposals aim to enrich community life in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. And those are just the range of the types of folks or practitioners that we'd love to see apply to our grant opportunity. Again, you do not have to identify as an artist, community organizer, or identify with any kind of label to be eligible to apply for this grant. You just need to be a person that cares about the Bed-Stuy community, has an idea, and can articulate it and explain why this idea would be impactful and meaningful for the local community. As part of the Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund, we will fund up to 20 selected proposals for the year. Each proposed project will receive $1,000 towards the execution of their project, right? So in total, that's about $20,000 put in the hands of Bed-Stuy community members and $20,000 reinvested directly back into the local community. Right, eligibility, who can apply to the Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund, right? So if you're a self-organized group or collective, such as a sewing club or a writers group, if you're a part of a formal organization like a block association or tenant association or volunteer group, right? Or you're an individual, right? And you're at least 18 years of age, living, working, or otherwise committed to and invested in Bed-Stuy, you are eligible to be able to apply for our grant opportunity. You are welcome to apply as a group. However, the primary applicant and recipient of the funds must be at least 18 years of age. And in terms of the eligibility of proposals must be responsive to or centered within the Bed-Stuy neighborhood and at least one of its many communities, right? Again, with a large emphasis on place, both emphasis on a proposal project happening and impacting the Bed-Stuy neighborhood, as well as keeping in mind interactions and building connections with the local communities, at least one of the local communities in the Bed-Stuy neighborhood. We're also looking for proposals that broadly align with this year's themes. Every year we have themes to guide the types of applications that people submit, right? And we're looking for proposals that broadly align with our themes of nurturing creativity, right? You can choose to define creativity however you will. Looking for proposals that uplift local legacies, right? So like oral histories or like um, story circles, right? For example, looking for proposals that foster community wellness, which can look anything from, you know, um, a Black women's book club to a series of yoga workshops to a series of gardening workshops or herbalism workshops, right? And a new theme for this year, looking for proposals that inspire collective advocacy or organizing around an issue or topic of importance to the local Bed-Stuy community. So we would love to see any type or range of proposals that broadly match up with those four themes for the 2024 grant application cycle. Um, And as an arts and community organization, we of course, would like to see some elements of art and creativity and or civic practice embodied by the proposed project. You don't need to check off every single kind of element, art and creativity and civic practice, but we will pay particular attention to proposals that can demonstrate some component of creative engagement and civic or community engagement or 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 creative kind of civic engagement, right? Through their proposals. But if anyone has any questions about, what that means or whether or not your proposal embodies or includes those elements, again, we're happy to answer any questions or provide feedbacks on responses and project ideas. Um, See, moving on. So something we really want to emphasize this year compared to past years is that proposed projects must include a publicly accessible component that activates or takes place in Bed-Stuy between uh, summer 2024 and summer 2025, right? So from the month that you receive the grant, ideally we're trying to put the funds in the hands of selected recipients by the end of July 2024. So ideally looking for projects that have that will both take place in Bed-Stuy and have a public component or mode of public interaction made available between July 2024 and July 2025, right? The purpose of the public component is to provide Bed-Stuy community members with the opportunity to experience, interact with, and contribute to meaningful initiatives, right? So we want to make sure that as a community grant, that the projects that we're supporting allow for people in the local community to interact with you as an individual and to interact with your broader project more directly, right? Public components may be held in person, virtually, in person, virtually, or some combination of both. If you have a creative idea or experimental idea for your sort of public component of your proposal, we're happy um, to support those types of experimental formats. Just make sure to explain to us exactly what you're trying to do and how the public is able to engage with you through your proposed project, right? Some examples of public components can include, but are not limited to, panel discussions, presentations, webinars, IG Lives, recording sessions, exhibitions, performances, festivals, listening parties, screenings, readings, and creative workshops, right? We have a strong preference to public components or initiatives that are free and held live in community spaces outside of the laundromat project, right? So that being said, it is actually a requirement that any proposed project be free, to the public, that it not be, an interaction that requires some sort of admission fee. And while we have a preference for events that are held live in community, right, where that means holding a live like webinar or holding a live in-person, workshop, um, we uh, we are open to projects and proposals that aren't held live, that may be held, again, as I said, in some kind of combined format or experimentally iterative presentation format. Just make sure to explain why you are choosing to um, initiate the publicly accessible component of your project in that way. Right. And this information is available on the Laundromat Project's website, but these are examples of, the types of programs, proposals, events, initiatives that you could potentially, apply to our Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund grant opportunity with, right? So you can propose anything from workshops and classes to traditional art making workshops and classes to skill shares, right? For professional writing, to cultural activities, to teach-ins or public education workshops that may not necessarily be about art, right? But can be about any kind of topic, like a historical, education workshop, for example. We're open to funding storytelling initiatives, right? Which can include oral histories and material or digital archives and associated projects, right? We're open to funding public performances or outdoor activations, which can include, dance, theater, spoken word, or open mic activations. We're open to proposals about community and place-based projects, right? Um, Such as walking tours, such as public murals or installations, or mapping and wayfinding projects. And again, this is not an exhaustive list of the types of projects that are eligible or that can be funded through our Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund. These are examples, and we're open to a very wide range of projects, so long as the questions on our application form are answered clearly and in full, right? And to go over to the other side of the types of examples, um, you know, you can propose gatherings for intergenerational community, like game nights, singing circles, book clubs, knitting clubs, and to give examples about the types of civic proposals or community engaged proposals we might be looking for. If you want to propose a food or a clothing drive, right, or need support, creating a community resource pantry of some kind, or funding a wellness initiative, right? We funded herbalism and healing workshops, yoga workshops, double Dutch programs, tennis programs in the past, for example, right? Or if you want to do any kind of innovative actions around mutual aid or cultural organizing or community organizing or activism, we're happy to review those types of proposals as well. Those proposals are definitely eligible for the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund this year. Or if you want to do something based around gardening and maintaining green space around the community, those types of programs or proposals are also eligible for this grant opportunity as well. So, just to give some more examples of the types of projects we fund, this is an example of one project that was funded by the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund back in 2021 called Garden in the Wake. Garden in the Wake is a community garden centering queer, trans, and non-binary Black folks. Garden in the Wake provides a safe, accessible, and multi-purpose space for folks to organize, engage with each other, cultivate food and herbs, share food with each other and the larger community through a community fridge and events, art making, and developing a beautiful respite for folks in community with the garden, right? So this is a project that we funded a few years ago, which is basically, us funding a community garden that will provide a safe, accessible community space for folks that identify as queer, trans, and or non-binary Black folks in the Bed-Stuy neighborhood. And again, wanting to emphasize that, the community component a publicly accessible component is a requirement, right, of the proposed project. And in this case, the publicly accessible component is one, opening up a community garden to uh, a broad, audience, right? As well as, activating that garden with, events or resources that would draw community members in, such as a community fridge, art making events, food and herbalism, workshops or events, or events where people share meals together. Another example of a previously funded project, again from the 2021 cycle of the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund, is a proposal that was called the Free Herbalism Medicine Cabinet. The Free Herbal Medicine Cabinet is a free 24/7 herbal medicine cabinet that was located outside of the Stuyvesant Gardens Community Center. Community members were able to benefit from medicinal herbal knowledge, which was made available as like flyers or like take home kind of literature, right? Embedded in the herbal medicine cabinet or made available around it. And the herbal medicine cabinet, since it was available and open to the Stuyvesant Gardens community 24/7, allowed for folks in that community to have 24/7 access to free medicine, right? In a cabinet that was regularly stocked and restocked. And the community or publicly accessible component in this case is that in addition to providing free medicine and sort of wellness resources for this local community, right? The cabinet was activated by having a multitude of like workshops, free medicine workshops, meaning workshops on how to prepare herbal remedies, for example, right, for that local community. So we've talked a lot about what makes an applicant eligible for this grant opportunity, what makes an application idea, right, eligible for the grant opportunity. Now we'll speak about what makes a proposal ineligible for the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund, right? So we will not consider or fund proposals that constitute solo production of artworks, research, activities, or campaigns made for personal practice or benefit. Again, this is a community grant with the purpose of having community members lead community projects that aim to have a positive impact on the Bed-Stuy neighborhood, right? So if you're the only one benefiting from this type of proposed project, work, activity, right? And the community is not benefiting or involved in any way, we will not consider the application because the emphasis is on community, the emphasis is on Bed-Stuy, right? The second point, we will not fund proposals with no involvement, impact, or engagement with additional stakeholders or a broader community in Bed-Stuy. Again, reiterating, what I said, but in a different way. There's a huge emphasis on place and community within Bed-Stuy, right? So if there's no intentionality communicated behind your proposal, your application, there's no desire to actually meaningfully engage with the local community and enrich the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood, we will not consider your proposal for further funding, right? And the sort of last point, right? Projects should not come at cost to participants from the local community, right? So we're not funding commercial projects, right? We're not going to fund like a down payment on like the down payment on like the loan for like a car or something, right? Or fund an initiative that is completely centered on making a profit, right? A for sale business or model, for example, right? That being said, we're also, we're not going to consider or fund proposals or projects that constitute or host events or activities that require an admission or participation fee, right? Since we would provide selected recipients with $1,000 of funding towards their proposed project, the expectation is that part of the funding will go towards removing any barriers to access, especially monetary barriers to access for engagement between the public, right, the community, and whatever program, project, or initiative that you're trying to build, right? And invite community members in with through their engagement. So those are the three types of proposals that would be ineligible for a grant opportunity. Again, the emphasis is on community. The emphasis is on community engagement and access, and making an impact on the local Bed-Stuy neighborhood and its various residents and neighbors. All that being said, in our review process, we will give priority consideration to folks that identify as being born or raised in Bed-Stuy, that identify as generational Bed-Stuy residents, and/or residents who have lived in Bed-Stuy for more than 10 years. We will also prioritize applications from individuals who identify as Black, Indigenous, Native, and/or people of color, as well as individuals in the disability community, including immunocompromised individuals, and folks who identify as members of the LGBTQIA+ community, right? And the reason why we give priority consideration to people who identify as such here is because we see the allocation of this fund as a way to help counter structural and systemic injustices in Bed-Stuy, which is historically Black neighborhood, and it is in a neighborhood that has, whose residents have experienced marginalization in a number of different ways, including lack of access to public funding or funding that would allow for investments or reinvestments back into the local community. Right. And how to apply, right? So if you go on our website, laundromatproject.org, and you go to the specific webpage about the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund, you're going to want to click on this hyperlink, right? laundromatproject.submittable.com to be able to access and fill out the 2024 application for this year. Our Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund application is submitted through the submittable.com platform, right? And as I said, when I opened up this information session, our application has been open since April 1st, 2024, and will close by 11:59 p.m., not 12 a.m., right? We'll close by 11:59 p.m. on May 1st, 2024, right? So the application is open for about a month. However, if you need any kind of support in accessing or submitting your application through the Submittable platform, you are welcome to reach out to Laundromat Project staff by email through community@laundromatproject.org. And we can support you there. Or if you would prefer to fill out your application via a hard copy, right, you're welcome to visit our storefront at 1476 Fulton Street, or email us, right, and we can provide you with a printable version of the application or a hard copy version of the application, which you can submit to us by hand, realizing that not everyone has immediate access to a computer or a stable Wi-Fi connection, right? And other parts about our timeline, we expect the review process to last about a month, right? So pretty much all of May, and ideally would notify selected recipients for the 2024 cycle of our grant in early June, either that first or second week in June, right? And once we reach out to selected recipients and the selected recipients accept, right, the award, the grant award, ideally we'll send out contracts and collect payment information with the intent of dispersing all of the monies associated with the grant fund, with the grant opportunity with the fund, and put them in recipients' hands by the end of July 2024. So it might take you know 1 to 2 months, right, once you're notified of your selection, for you to receive the full amount of monies associated with the being awarded the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund. And I just want to emphasize that there, just in case folks are applying with projects that are, contingent upon receiving money right away. We're happy to fund projects that, are occurring, as early as June 2024, right? However, because of our internal grant disbursement process, we as much as we might like, might not be able to disperse the full grant award until late June or late July, right? At the earliest and at the latest, right? So that's something to keep in mind when applying to this fund. Yeah. So for this portion of the application, I'm going to walk us through the actual submittable application. Bear with me for a second. Yeah. So, when you click the submittable link right on our website, it'll take you to this web page, right? laundromatproject.submittable.com /submit, which is our landing page or submittable landing page. And in order to find the 2024 Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund application, you scroll to the bottom of this page and you click on this first option, right? 2024 Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund. If you click on guidelines, all that'll show up are the guidelines, which are available on our website, but also available on the submittable application in case you need to refer to them quickly. But if you want to access the actual application, you need to hit the blue apply button here, which will take you to a similar page. But what'll pop up first are the guidelines for the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund, and you have to scroll all the way down to be prompted for the actual application, right? And right now I'm signed in to Submittable, so that's also something to take note of, right? In order to apply through submittable.com, you need to first create a Submittable account, right? Once you make the Submittable account, then you will have access to the platform and be able to fill out our application page, right? Right now, some of my information is already filled in, right? We asked for like sort of general demographic or location info. But before you even get to this part of the application, if it's your first time going through the application, right, you will be prompted to fill out an eligibility form, or, oh, whoops, excuse me, this is the wrong form. But you will be prompted to fill out an eligibility form that ask you similar questions as you would see in the going through like our Create and Connect Fund guidelines, right? So one of the first questions will be, have you ever received the grant before, right? The Create and Connect Fund grant is for first-time recipients, right? Primarily. So if you are a first-time recipient, you should say no to that question. It'll also ask you questions about just sort of whether or not you identify or resonate with any type of position in the community, such as like being an artist, being a community organizer, being an elder, being a neighbor, right? and asking questions like, will your project happen in Bed-Stuy, right? Do you intend to make a community impact in Bed-Stuy? All of which just to ensure that, again, that your project is in alignment, with the goals of the fund, which is to fund projects by community members who may not necessarily have access to these types of grant opportunities, and to fund projects that are grounded in a community, led by community neighbors or people, with strong relationships or affiliations to the Bed-Stuy neighborhood, and seeking to make a positive impact on the local Bed-Stuy community. But, once you go through that eligibility form, you'll be again prompted to respond to the general application questions. And each time you go through a page in the submittable application, it'll take you kind of like to the top of the guidelines again, but you just need to scroll all the way down to be able to access the rest of the application, right? And when you get to this heading, right, when it says 2024 Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund applicant profile, this is when you've reached these sort of primary questions associated with our 2024 application. So we'll ask for your name, your pronouns, email, phone number, whether or not you're applying as an individual or on behalf of a group, right? Whether or not you're 18 years or older, as well as asking for your social media information or public outreach information. And when you get to this first question, biography, this is your opportunity to tell us more about who you are as a person and your, positionality or relationship to the local community in Bed-Stuy, as well as, highlight any parts of your history, background, or identity that you think are important for us to know, right? And project proposal is the next section of the application. And this is the most important section of the application because this is where you get to describe your actual project idea, right? And the various components associated with your project. So your project statement is a very important question, right? Because this is where we're asking you to provide a detailed description of your project idea. Again, within the guidelines of the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund, we're looking to fund projects that are either new, ongoing initiatives, or new iterations of past or ongoing projects. And please take your time, when you're responding or drafting responses to your project statement, because this is one of those questions that we will consider heavily in our review process as we evaluate, whether your proposed project idea is in alignment with the goals of the Create and Connect Fund, right? The next question, again, and a very important question, as I've been saying throughout this information session, there's a huge emphasis on both place and community engagement, right? So we want to hear, one, the intended community or audience that you're trying to impact or build relationships with or, connect with through your proposed project. And we want you to sort of define what that relationship is. Or if you don't have an existing relationship, how you intend to approach that community or audience through your proposed project, right? Wanting to make sure that, the folks that are applying to our grant fund, the folks that receive funding for their projects are doing their due diligence and really keeping the well-being of their fellow neighbors of the Bed-Stuy community in mind, right, through their initiatives. And the next question, again, a very important question, the impact statement. We want to know what community need, want, or issue does your project address, and how your project engages, responds to, or impacts the community that you're trying to impact within Bed-Stuy, right? And I think within this question, speaking to especially a community need is something that we're really looking for. We want to make sure that again, as a community, as a grant program that emphasizes community, that y'all are doing your research or thinking at least very thoughtfully and meaningfully about what the Bed-Stuy community needs, or what you've heard your local neighbors or folks in the community say they need, want, or would like to have addressed uh, for however long you've been affiliated with or lived in Bed-Stuy, right? Wanting to make sure that there is a sense of intended impact, right, through your proposed project. Um, so again, these are the three most important questions in the application: the project statement, your statement on community engagement, and your impact statement here. Yeah, so the next question in the application: how will the funds support your project? So the laundromat project, we try to streamline our grant applications. There are a lot of grant giving organizations that require very long and tedious grant applications that are multiple pages, right? That might even require detailed, budget spreadsheets, or itineraries, right? But the laundromat project, we don't require any kind of budget statement or detailed budget. All we want to know is how you will use the funds, right? You're free to use if selected, free to use the $1,000 of funding towards any aspect of your project that is necessary to execute said project or program or initiative, right? So you're welcome to use funds towards the purchasing of supplies, of food, of catering, compensation fees for labor, either for collaborators, contracts, or for your own labor, right? For renting equipment, for covering fees for permits. If, like, for example, you're doing an outdoor activation, you would need, a permit most likely, or for space rentals, right? If you do it in a community space that requires some kind of low cost rental, or for another reason, right? If you click other, you'll be prompted to another question will pop up that will prompt you to explain, what you would like to use the funds for. But we just want a general sense of, what or how I should say the funds will be applied in your chosen project. Oh, and something else to emphasize: if a question has a red asterisk next to it, it's a required question. If it doesn't, it's an optional question, like our next question here, right? If you were applying as an individual, you would not need to answer this question. But if you're applying as a group, or you're applying as a partner, or your project has collaborators, right, we'd like to see a short description of who your project collaborators or partners are. Brief description about their background, like 1 or 2 sentences, right? And 1 or 2 or even 3 sentences about their role in the project, right? We're more interested in the primary applicant or primary collective applying to the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund. And so, we don't require, or ask for, at least at this stage of the application process, right? Don't ask for expansive descriptions of your partners. If selected, we'll likely follow up with you individually about, information about your partners as your projects are ongoing. And this next question, this is a required question. In what formats will your project primarily take shape? Digital, in person, or some combination of both, or an experimentally, even an experimentally iterative idea of a format, a presentation format. And if you haven't already described the public component of your proposal, this is the space where you would want to define that. Again, a requirement of the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund is, including within your proposal a way for community members to directly engage with what you're trying to do, right? So that can be, workshop, that can be an IG Live, that can be a webinar, it can be, some kind of in-person engagement, or it can be something else entirely. I would recommend that you kind of mentioned the public component of your proposal in let's see, go up in the project statement, right? First mention that in the project statement of your application. But you can also expand on it here, or if you just didn't have room for it in your project statement, in this question, right? In the question asking about the format of your project. And this next question, it's an optional question, but it's an important question, right? Again, like we have a strong emphasis on place and community through this through the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund. So we ask folks if your proposed idea takes place in person, right? Especially, asking y'all to describe the project location or locations you're considering or plan to activate. So you don't have to have a definitive locked-in location or venue for your proposed project if it has an in-person public component, right? At this moment of your application, right? We realize that it can take time to figure out those details. So this question is more so asking for a general sense of the types of locations, venues, communities that you would, community spaces that you would like to activate and host your proposed project. And the next question is required. We're asking you what the timeline of your proposed project is, right? And something to keep in mind is that, selected recipients for the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund have up to 1 year, right? The expectation is to execute your proposed projects, your selected projects, within a year of your receipt of the grant funds, right? So, ideally, we would like to have all of our selected recipients receive their money, their full grant award by July 31st, 2024, or by the end of July 31st, 2024, right? So that means you would have until summer of next year, right? Until the end of July 31st, 2025 to execute your commissioned or awarded project. And then, again, going back to this question, what is the timeline? We're just asking for a general sense of when you would plan to work on your project, or when you would plan to host the, activations associated with your project. So you can say something as broad as, planning to host a series of like wellness workshops in spring 2025, between February 2025 and like April 2025, for example, right? You can say something like that. Or you can be like very specific, planning to host program or like IG Live or something at like on June 1st, 2025 at 6 p.m., at XYZ location or XYZ social media account. Right. So we just really want, a sense of how your project is going to unfold throughout the year. If you need a year, you can, also obviously execute your project much faster. But we give folks a large range of time to execute their project, because, we realize that sometimes it may take extra time to reach out to community partners or venues, or figure out what types of like equipment or resources you might need to be able to execute your project in full. And we want to make sure that we give you enough space and time to be able to do that. And this next question is optional. Anything else we should know? This question is a space where you can, either expand on your responses to previous questions, or provide additional context or information that you feel is relevant for us to know and consider in your application that was not asked about in any of the prior questions or any of the questions following this section, right? But anything you put in this section should be relevant, to your project, your application. Yeah, and that was the project proposal section of the application. This next section is asking questions that would allow us to identify whether or not you qualify for priority consideration in the review process. Again, um, in honor of the legacy of Bed-Stuy as a historically Black neighborhood, and to tackle, structural injustices for communities of color, communities of disability, and LGBTQIA plus communities. We will give priority consideration to folks who identify as members of those communities in the application review process, as well as folks who identify as generational Bed-Stuy residents, or who were born and raised in Bed-Stuy or have a very strong, tenure or relationship to the Bed-Stuy neighborhood and its various communities. But yeah, if there's some aspect of your relationship to Bed-Stuy that you would like to expand on and have us considering your application, there is space for you to expand on that relationship here under the question, if you would like to expand on your experience at Bed-Stuy, please share more here. This is an optional question, but wanting to make sure that if there's more nuances, more important things to keep in mind, you know, within your relationship to the local community, wanting to make sure that we give you space to explain that. And this next section, labeled additional demographic information, is entirely optional. You can choose to fill it out or you can choose to skip it if you'd like. However, we ask these questions as a way for the Laundromat project to be able to get a better sense of the communities we serve, making sure that if we're reaching out to communities of color, communities of disability, right, and we're prioritizing those applicants in our application, making sure that when we do outreach that we are effectively reaching out to those communities and encouraging them, to apply to our various programs, and including grant opportunities, right? So this is a way to make sure that we as an organization are doing our due diligence. But again, this entire section is completely optional. You can choose to fill it out or you can choose to skip it. Either way, the information included in this section will not be shared with reviewers and will not have any kind of impact on your application during the review process. So we ask general questions like, your date of birth, educational background, formal and informal, various cultural or gender identities, as well as providing a section for you to self-identify however you would. But that's all there is to the overall application. You can, if you're still working on your application, you would hit Save Draft over here. If you're ready to submit your application, you would hit the Apply or Submit button at the end. However, I would recommend that if you're still drafting your responses to your application, that you save them on a Google document or a Word document or a Page document, because submittable as a platform is very finicky. And even if you press Save Draft, it might not actually save your most recent responses. So definitely recommend saving your responses in multiple locations and in different documents. But that is the entire application. So I'll take us back to the main presentation here. Go back to present. Right. And to round off, our conversation about the overall Bed-Stuy Create and Connect Fund and the application process, wanting to make sure to end on a note, emphasizing what exactly we're looking for in terms of proposals, what makes a proposal competitive, or what makes a proposal eligible or viable for serious consideration during the review process. So all proposals should be feasible and clear in the description of the proposed idea or project that you would like to receive funding for, right? So for example, there are limits to what $1,000 of funding can do, right? So if you're trying to build like a rocket ship or something, obviously $1,000 would not be enough. So that type of project would not be, feasible. So we would not sort of consider it, um, for funding, right? And that's sort of an exaggerated example. But also we're looking for clarity. If we can't understand what your idea is, or your relationship to the Bed-Stuy community or the specific community you're trying to impact, or we can't understand the intended impact or benefit to the local community, right? That makes it harder for us to evaluate your application, your proposal with full consideration, right? That being said, during the review process, the Laundromat project, and any reviewers on the review panel will not penalize applicants for grammatical errors, right? So we do not care if you miss a period or a comma, or you misspell a word or anything like that, as long as we can understand the main ideas of what you're trying to articulate. That is more than enough for us. We're looking for proposals that are intentional, and have thoughtful engagement with the local community. Again, as I've been emphasizing throughout this information session, that this is a community grant, right? We want to put money in the hands of local Bed-Stuy community neighbors, members, right? Um, to lead projects that aim to make a positive impact on the local community, right? So we want to see that intentionality. We want to hear about your reasoning, the reasoning behind your project, and why you feel it's important to do this now. Um, again, with this emphasis on community and place in the Bed-Stuy Create Connect grant, wanting to make sure that when you fill out the application, you have a clearly defined audience or community, right? There's a whole question specifically about that. And one of the requirements for the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund is to have a publicly accessible component to it, whether that be an in-person, virtual, activation or format, or experimental or creative engagement format. We're looking for proposals that allow community members to be able to interact with your project, right? So whether that be a workshop or a webinar, IG Live, a listening session, right? Maybe a community dinner or something like that, or any type of kind of public interface you can think of. You want to see that included in your proposal, and also huge emphasis on wanting to see proposals that can clearly articulate the type of community or cultural impact that engaging in the proposed project would have on Bed-Stuy and its community members. Is very important to us. We want to make sure that there is a positive impact to be had through an investment in your proposed project. And we want to make sure, that in your proposal, you're responsive to and accountable to community rhythms or needs. Wanting to make sure that you, as an applicant, have an understanding of the needs, wants, issues, or kind of the desires of your local community. Maybe it can be in the form of like things you heard in the community, through conversations, right? Wanting to make sure that you have an understanding of what Bed-Stuy community members want to see or do or interact with, right, in terms of a community engaged project, and wanting to see that intentionality built in or addressed in your proposal. And of course, going back to our four themes, right, guiding the broad range of projects that we'd like to see, wanting to fund projects that align with at least one of these four themes: nurturing creativity, uplifting local legacies, fostering community wellness, or inspiring collective advocacy or organizing. Yeah, so that's what we want to see in a nutshell. And we're almost at the end of our information session. These are sort of general questions that we get asked every year, which I will answer in full before providing additional follow-up or contact information. So, can my project be held in a location outside of Bed-Stuy? The answer is no. Projects should have stakeholdership should happen or directly engage with communities in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood, which is bounded by Classen Avenue, Flushing Avenue, Atlantic Avenue, Broadway, and Eastern Parkway. And if you type in, Bed-Stuy, Bedford-Stuyvesant in Google Maps, it'll generate these sort of city boundaries, of the neighborhood, so you can more easily see what counts as being in Bed-Stuy or what is Bed-Stuy. And making sure that your project happens or engages with communities within the Bed-Stuy neighborhood. That being said, even though we are not going to fund projects outside of the perimeter of Bed-Stuy, your project can be multi-sided, right? So it can happen across multiple locations, or it can happen across multiple forms of engagement, right? And mix of in-person or virtual, right? And held across multiple spaces in the neighborhood. And it can also be held across different times. Not everything, if you have a multi-sided project or like, let's say, a series of workshops, it doesn't all need to happen the same day, same week, same month. You can space it out. Because again, you have 1 year, until the end of July 2025 to initiate your project proposal in full. How would I know if I qualified for this grant opportunity? So when you click on the submittable application for the first time, it will prompt you to fill out a short eligibility form before redirecting you to the actual application and application questions. You can see all of our eligibility requirements on our website under the eligibility heading, right? And the direct link to our website is laundromatproject.org / what we do / artist funding / create and connect. And the link to our submittable application is also embedded in that webpage on our laundromatproject.org website. The next question: are there any limitations of what can be purchased with the Create and Connect Fund? Not really, right? The funds can be used for any aspect of the awarded proposal, including fees for commissions, artist compensation, labor, production, and supply. So as long as it's relevant to the execution of your project, you can use your funding towards that expense. We don't place many restrictions on how you can use the funds once awarded. However, something to keep in mind is that depending on your tax status, funds are considered taxable income. So when I say tax status, I mean the status you fill out when you file your taxes every year come tax time if you're an accountant, right? An individual versus like a corporation versus a 501c3. And it's usually only 501c3s or 501c3s, nonprofits that are tax exempt. I would strongly suggest consulting with your accountant if you have any questions about whether or not your receipt of these funds would be considered taxable income. Can awardees borrow supplies from the laundromat project? So the answer to that is not typically. Again, the funds are meant to be inclusive of production, supplies, labor, and materials costs. The expectation is that proposed projects, accepted proposals will be developed, installed, and executed independently of the laundromat project. Right? Because again, we want these to be community-led projects, neighbor-led projects, for which we will provide funding for. However, that doesn't mean we're not open to collaboration. That doesn't mean we'll instantly say no to you borrowing supplies. Instead, what I would say is that opportunities for collaboration, opportunities for support beyond the definition of the terms for the grant, right, will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. So you can always ask us, but again, the expectation is that the funds are inclusive of production, fees for production, supplies, labor, and materials costs. How long is the review process? So the open call, the window of time to submit your grants applications is from April 1st to May 1st, 2024. And then immediately following the close of that open call, right? We will enter the laundromat project, will enter into the review phase of evaluating those proposals. And that review process is 1 month from May 1st to June 1st, 2024. Once that process is completed, selected applicants will be noted in early June, either that first week or second week of June. And then we will, send a contract and ask for payment information to move into the grant distribution process for selected recipients. If selected for the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund, how long will it take to receive those funds? So it can take anywhere between 1 to 2 months after the initial notice of acceptance, right, for recipients to receive their full grant award in full. So that can be, you can receive your funds as early as, late June 2024 or late July 2024. So 1 to 2 months. And that's something to keep in mind, right? Especially if your project is contingent upon receiving these funds right away to execute your proposal, right? But, in acknowledgement of that kind of long grant distribution process, that's why we give selected recipients up to a year from the notice of their acceptance to execute their projects, right? So if we award your grant at the latest, possible time, right, July 31st, 2024, you have until the end of July of 2025 to execute your proposed project. Next set of questions, is a detailed budget required in the application process? No, we don't ask for nor require applicants to submit a budget. We also don't micromanage recipients, who receive the funds and how to administer those funds, right, towards their project. We leave those decisions up to you. However, even though we don't ask for detailed budget statements or spreadsheets, right, if you feel like it's relevant to your project to provide us with a sense of your intended budget, you can definitely include some information about that in the section of the application that has the question, is there anything else we need to know, right? Next question, common FAQ for the project proposal section of the application, is there a minimum number of participants that the public component of my project would need to engage? No, there is no minimum number of participants. We understand that some people, you might have, I don't know, 30 RSVPs to your proposed event or engagement or program, but then only 5 people show up. Those are things that you can't control, and we will not penalize you or make that a requirement in the proposal. Next question, is the laundromat project open to funding a program that has also received additional funding from other grant programs? Yes. We totally understand that some initiatives, some projects, some programs need additional support from other sources to be able to be executed. And to expand on that, I would say that to my earlier point about proposals being feasible and being, for the applicant to make it clear that their proposal is feasible to be executed under our grant, that is a case where, if let's say your project requires $2,000, right, to be able to be executed in full, I would definitely make note of that in your application, that you are applying to other grant opportunities or other sources in order to supplement the extra monetary needs of your proposed project, right? And that receipt of the Bed-Stuy Create Connect Fund is not the only grant or source of funding that would make your that would make or break your proposal, right? So that's something to mention there, if your proposed project falls into that kind of description that I just said. Next question, can the Create Connect Fund support school programs for middle school and high school age kids in Bed-Stuy? And the answer to that is maybe, because something to keep in mind is that the grant prioritizes projects that are accessible to the broader Bed-Stuy community as per public component requirement, right? So we want to make sure that we're funding proposals that are generally accessible to the wider community. You can definitely and certainly identify a specific community or audience that you would like to engage with through your proposed project or program, right? But in the case of middle school or high school programs, they're if that program is held at a school, right, and the only audience that it can possibly engage with are the middle school and high school students, um, we would encourage you to maybe host that program elsewhere, so other folks in the community can participate or contribute to that project. So for example, we had a proposal where someone proposed the youth arts showcase a couple years ago, um, where middle school, or I think just high school students were tasked with producing an art exhibition of their own work, right, and presenting it to the local community. So being able to showcase their artwork and be able to produce an exhibit um, in conversation with the wider community, right? So that would be an example where you can definitely have a project proposal engaging middle school and high school students, but also engage the broader Bed-Stuy community. The next question: can the Create Connect Fund be used to support block parties and cultural festivals? The answer is yes. We're happy to fund a select number of like block parties or cultural festivals through this fund. However, um, the aspects or activities that the funds are being used towards should be accessible to the community, meaning that for whatever activities we fund at the block party, the funded activity should not require an admission fee, should not have any kind of monetary barrier to entry for participation, right? So that's something to keep in mind. And the next question: if I applied last year and was awarded the Create Connect Fund, can I reapply? No. So the Create Connect Fund is for first-time recipients of the fund. If you were awarded a Create Connect grant, a Bed-Stuy Create Connect grant last year, you should apply to the Create and Reconnect grant, which is another set of funding, which is a different grant opportunity for folks that have cycled through our various programs or grant opportunities. The exception to this being that if you are a past recipient who is applying as part of a new collective undertaking a new project, that is the exception to that rule, and in which case we would then consider you eligible to apply for a Create and Connect Fund. Yeah, and so that's the end of our sort of general FAQs. If you have any questions, you are welcome to email the Laundromat Projects team at community@laundromatproject.org. Community@laundromatproject.org is spelled COMMUNITY at LAUNDROMATPROJECT.org. Again, that's community@laundromatproject.org. Or if you would prefer to stop by our storefront for in-person support or to ask a question of our staff directly, you're welcome to visit us at our storefront location at 1476 Fulton Street, Brooklyn, New York, 11216. Again, we're located right around the corner from the Kingston through C train stop. The best days to stop by the storefront are Tuesdays from 9 to 6, as well as Thursdays and Fridays from 9 to 6. So Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays are best time to stop by the storefront and interact with staff. Or if you'd like to set up an appointment for an in-person visit, you can also email us at community@laundromatproject.org, and we can arrange for in-person visit or for a one-to-one session to answer any questions or review any initial drafts of responses. But yeah, that is the whole information session. I hope it was informative and answered any and all questions potential applicants may have had in preparing their application proposal for the 2024 cycle of our grant opportunity. But we are happy at the Laundromat Project to be able to provide this grant opportunity annually to the community. So if you don't get selected as a recipient this year, you can always apply next year. And again, if you have any questions, please email us at community@laundromatproject.org or visit us at 1476 Fulton Street. Thank you so much, and I hope to see your applications come through.